Looks like our panel is growing here. I think you should all be able to unmute yourselves. Let me know if you can't. Can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good morning, everybody.
Okay.
Good morning, Ted.
Morning, Ted.
Morning, Ted.
Can anyone
awfully
hear my
long.
voice? And wave your hand or something. So, let's see here.
Hey, Ted, can you hear us?
There, I can hear now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we
Okay.
can.
Yes.
Having some issues here.
God, how long you been sporting that beard?
Oh,
It's been since my trek through the Wyoming wilderness 2 years ago.
Okay.
And you stayed there.
Yeah.
It kind of, forgive the pun, but it kind of grew on me.
Oh, there's Ted.
I'm here. Yeah, no, I was busy looking at the thing. I was hearing doubles here, and I was hearing I have the live stream going to the YouTube. We run out of spaces for people to join in, and so I was hearing that too, and I was like, okay, what's going on here? But I cut that now, so I can see it's streaming, but anyway, well. I guess this is the early bird session here, and there's some more coming in, I think. Let me go ahead and admit them. Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting well, I don't know. I can tell you well over 100 people responded and said they were interested and wanted to get in on it. So we'll see how many. But anyway, wow, what a what an odd thing, huh? To get a LitSupport message over the weekend, and well, I mean, I'm not a big concordance power user by any stretch, but well, I know a couple of the obvious things anyway, and I figured I'll give that a shot. And then all of a sudden, everybody's, hey, what's going on?
Yeah, hadn't thought about concordance in a long time.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. It's as if though concordance is in the rearview mirror these days. Pretty far behind.
No bias there.
Concordance in years.
But it was neat to see everybody jump in and try to answer the questions for her, just like the old days.
Right. That should even be more interesting in this particular session. If we start stacking up bodies here, everybody will answer at once, right? What's anything new and exciting with anyone? Does anyone have work as usual, or is everyone pretty much come to some sort of stop?
pretty much everything's at a grind at this point.
For a while.
I'm getting
Crazy.
inquiries from my clients who are asking for availability and things like that, looking into June, July, possibly. But that's it so far. It's been very scarce.
Yeah. Well, I guess the good news.
Clients, mostly corporate clients that we've been working with here lately, but all of our trials have been completely pushed. Some of us have dates, some of us don't even have dates right now. And so right now we're focusing on CLEs, primarily on how to do Zoom and things like that So it's kind of an interesting switch going from, hey, let's go to trial to, hey, let's learn how to do trial on the computer. So.
Right.
I did do a great Zoom hearing on Thursday, an actual legal Zoom hearing. It was the first one that I had done, and it actually went relatively smoothly. So the biggest issue was people forgetting to unmute their mics whenever they were about to talk. So.
Yeah, we're leaving this session wide open, so everybody could just make noise. I mean, I'm not going to try and micromanage anyone here.
Well, we're doing better than the Supreme Court so far.
Yeah, no toilet flush.
Yeah, I kind of briefly read somewhere that the Contra Costa courthouses are open as of today or something.
Yeah, I read that as well.
Yeah.
The what is open?
Contra Costa in Northern California.
Yeah. So probably other courtrooms may follow soon. I guess.
Still gaining participants. I saw Dwayne there somewhere. I'm sure he's like somewhere here in the Brady Bunch or so. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and give some sort of whatever. I was looking at the thing on the Yahoo group. I think it said it was started originally in 1997.
Yes, it was seems like a long time ago.
It was.
At least 3 crises ago.
I'd be surprised that it's good to see that we still have some people that were around during that time. So, but yeah, it was. It started off kind of as a small group of about, I don't know, 15 or 20 people that, you know, we were trying to find some kind of national audience, because at that time, most of the communication listservs and things like that were somewhat restricted, where you either had to, you know, it was mainly product specific or something like that. So we were looking at something a little more broader to where, and, you know, we started, like I said, we started with about 15 people that were interested, and, you know, and it grew quite a bit. I think at one time we had about 10,000 members that were part of the list, and I think at one point we had at least 50,000 messages or so that had been approved. We started off as an unmoderated list, but that didn't last long. It got a little crazy, so we had to go to a moderated list, and then so it ended up being, you know, we probably had 30 to 50 messages a day or something like that we would review. And some of the best ones probably never made it to the list, but there were quite a few squabbles that we had. Speaking of concordance, probably one of the most interesting one, and I don't know if either one of these guys are on, but when Bill Kellerman and Jeff Lipsman got into a little bit of spat with summation and concordance, it was pretty good. So, but anyway, we had a lot of fun with it. It was good. It served as kind of a little lifeline at the time for folks like us that we didn't have the kind of communication infrastructure we have now. But back then, you know, if you had a problem, you know, you could throw it out there, and hopefully someone would respond.
Absolutely. I see George Social, one of the great celebrities in LitSupport, if there is such a thing. Why don't you go ahead and say something encouraging to us all?
Something encouraging, okay. Well, let's see. I rearranged my office so that the light hits my face instead of my back because of all these Zoom calls.
Yeah.
I think, you know, so looking murkily into a blurry crystal ball, I don't hear a lot positive right now from law firms on the defense side, but I do know that at least some plaintiffs' firms are gearing up One here in town has gone on a hiring spree, sued out a whole bunch of new cases. So I suspect what we all are looking at is a lull right now, whether it's a lull for those of us where work is down, or a lull for those of us who find ourselves needing to, as I am, recreate ourselves again. I think it's only a lull, and it's likely to change so that at some point, good question, when? 3 months, 6 months? We are going to be facing a tsunami of litigation. And maybe this will become a very active listserv once again as people try to figure out how to handle a whole bunch of challenges. So I know there was a call out to Mike Quartarero to try to put something, sort of a modern version of this up on the ACED's website. There are other options as well. I know for me, back in the day, this listserv, this Yahoo group was an invaluable resource as I tried to figure out what to do with, in particular, concordance when I was using it.
Which seems to be still the current hot topic.
Apparently.
Oh man.
Just want to
The medium is the message again.
I just want to give George a shout out as well. If it wasn't for George Sosha, I'm not sure I ever would have gotten into this industry. It was an article in Business Week where George was quoted in December of 2003, and he talked about the the rise of e-discovery before we knew if e-discovery was a capital E or a lowercase e. Was there a dash? Was it all one word? And George and all of his work and all of your work really created an industry. And it was reading that article where I realized that there was going to be, the demand for talent was going to exceed the supply of talent. And I suspect that, to what George just said, we're going to see that again in the next 60, 90, 120, 180 days, certainly before the end of the year. There'll be a demand for talent. It's not the exact talent that we might know today, but there'll be skills and competencies and experience. And if you've ever been in e-discovery, you know that your job one is figure it out. Like no one's gone before you. George was one of the first in the boat, and then a lot of us followed him. And, I was very happy to have George in the boat and get up to St. Paul and Minneapolis and Eden Prairie and, and go from there. So George, I just want to say in front of everybody, thank you for being one of the first to the boats.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The pioneer for sure.
I don't know if anyone knows somebody named QAWSEDRTQHHUUPILCOLMP and a bunch of other letters, but I'm not going to admit them to this meeting. It's like, okay, I mean, you're either a really crappy scammer or you're just missed the boat on naming
Sounds
yourself.
like a Zoom bomber.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't really, I'm not in the mood for watching any unauthorized videos right now.
I don't know. It could be Elon Musk.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Maybe it's his child's first video experience.
He's going to need to learn about you're going to be a good moderator.
Yeah. Oh, funny. Yeah. I thought, okay, well, I mean, I don't know how many we're actually going to end up with here. I mean, it's growing. People are still jumping in, which is why I put the YouTube feed on as well, just in case. But I thought, I'm not just going to have it. I mean, I put the notice out on the LitSupport group, and I thought, well, that's a little bit risky, but I'm going to go ahead and keep an eye and make sure I'm admitting people, watching who they are coming in. I mean, if I don't know a name, well, that's, I don't know everybody in the world, that's for sure. But I don't think there is such a person as QUXT, whatever it was. They're gone now. Oh, gosh. Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, my work is 100% courtroom based, or close to it anyway. And it's, the doors have closed for us. So like some of the others, I mean, I've been kind of involved in learning new stuff, watching a lot of webinars and getting involved in some CLEs and things like that. And but I agree with George that I think is a giant snowball that's rolling and accumulating, and it's not melting. I mean, some cases are settling, and obviously there's some added incentive for some firms to go ahead and make it go away, but they're not all able to do that. They're not all going to do that, and a lot of people want their day in court, and maybe a little different when it gets down to it, but I don't think it's all going away for sure. I know all our cases aren't. I mean, we've had a couple settle and stuff like that, but
I've had no settles so far. Everyone is still on the docket. We're just kind of waiting around to see what the courts do.
Yeah.
But so far, no settlements, no mediations even. We've had a couple of online virtual hearings, but nothing, our trials have not settled. So that's good. But I agree. I'm gonna agree with you on this tsunami. I think that we're going to, and it's going to be very, some are going to be lighter, but then you're going to see some practice areas that are going to be very heavy. I think you're going to see a lot of litigation coming out of this, but also employment law. And I mean, it's going to have some pretty significant legs. And then that's not even including what the feds are going to do with the issues with PPP and some people that have taken advantage when they shouldn't have. And I think you're going to see a lot of new interesting practice areas open up too. So
right. By raise of hands, how many people have done something with PPP or unemployment or whatever, to whatever degree, where you're involved in? A fair amount, yeah. Others, I know some people are. Have any who are employed by law firms had any issues, any layoffs that have hit you directly?
On our side, no, we haven't. The firms made a concerted effort to avoid that as much as possible. Looking at the long-term view that your best resources are your people, your personnel, and to lose people, it's just kind of short-sighted at this point.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, we haven't had anything specifically with layoffs, but we have been encouraged to tighten up our budget for the remainder of the year. So and see how that works. So that's probably going to be the first step, and then we'll see how things shake out as we go back.
The most interesting background at this point to me has been watching Michael Wright move around the wherever he's going. I was there, oh, what's going on with that? There's a little bit of motion. How many are, speaking of backgrounds, how many are using a virtual background right now? Raise your hands. Just a few, yeah. I was reading some stuff on that earlier, earlier in the week, yes, last week, whenever it was, recently, in recent memory. And it was saying that actually that in some ways, and this was, I think, by a judge, that this particular judge felt that it was a little bit disingenuous to put up a virtual background versus a real background. But yeah, who knows, and then some of the courts are doing it, with their courtroom, the flags or the shield in the background or whatever. And Martin is doing some fancy artwork there in the back. I did one. I did one myself that I don't know if anybody happened to catch it. I'll put that on. This is my virtual background, my favorite one, I think. So this is my I'm doing something else virtual background. Yeah. So I can step out of the room, go get a cup of coffee, whatever I want to do. And I read about this, I think, on PC Magazine or one of those, just saying, don't do anything exaggerated. I did no big smiles or no gestures that say yes, I'll volunteer for that. Or anyway, that was my favorite. I haven't actually had a chance to use it in an official capacity yet. It's there. I have it ready to go.
Ted, one of my colleagues was using a background that has a bunch of beer cans behind him, and he holds up a beer can and he goes like this and throws it over his shoulder, and it looks like it goes right into the background with the rest of them in the back.
Oh, nice. There's some creative stuff you can do. I know a lot of people have put, I did one early on, you know, with my logo and all that. And then looking at it, you know, I thought, maybe that looks a little cheesy. I don't want to use that too much either, you know, especially in group meetings where you know people. It's like, oh, we already know who you are. You know, we don't care, you know, whatever. Good stuff. Feel free to jump in, anyone who wants to at any time.
Well, it's Joe Bartolo here from New York. Nice seeing everyone. I'm in New Jersey, trying to stay local in quarantine. Feeling healthy, thank God. And had a couple of friends that have been positive, but they're doing well. So thank God. And they've you know, done the right things by you know, giving fluids to, you know, help other people. You know, I think there'll be some return to some new normalcy soon. And certainly, as you may see as well, Ted, I'm sure at all phases of the EDRM, there'll be some increased use and awareness in remote technologies. I'm sure there'll be some more, you know, video conferencing done even in courtroom type settings, and more technologies developed to, you know, do the typical things that are done in courtroom technology now, physically in the courtroom, where you'll have some more, you know, virtual remote options, you know, to, you know, if we have crises like this again that we face, we'll, you know, have other options available, you know, where it makes sense. And then certainly, you know, those that prefer the physical courtroom model, you know, hopefully that'll be readily available to us all again soon. And in terms of e-discovery, certainly there's been certain layoffs that, you know, have impacted both service providers and law firms in terms of their internal LitSupport. So service providers that are still, you know, functioning and out there will certainly see some transactional pickup in terms of projects that are available if they're going to need outsourcing support to help law firms and corporate law departments with. And certainly I also work providing software licensing. A lot of those discussions have been delayed because of this pandemic, but there's certainly a lot of activity along software licensing and evaluating softwares. And I'm sure a lot of those discussions will pick up again as there's more of a return to a sense of normalcy. I wish everyone safety, and it's good seeing everyone's face on this call.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll mention, Joe, it's something I learned watching. I don't know if all of you happen to see the actual voir dire going on there, which is an actual trial, and it's on YouTube if you haven't already seen it. But one thing that they did, Joe, is they said if you have your phone like this, turn it like this, and that might apply to you, because we see like there you go. See, now we have a full widescreen view. It worked. I mean, I actually learned something. That's probably the only thing by watching that. But no, I mean, technology. You know, I mean, I've been in technology since a while now. But you know, lawyers early on were reluctant to use technology. A lot of them still, we find them out there. You know,
Right. Just early on.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, no, exactly. I mean, still there. The interesting thing that I think that this whole deal is going to bring for a lot of us right here is going to be that people aren't afraid or uncomfortable or unused to the concept of bringing video, you know, into the courtroom or doing whatever ADR or mediations, whatever, and just using it versus what's this scary mystery stuff that I don't want to get anywhere near.
Yep, well said.
Yeah, so I may say, I find issues sometimes I think would be pressing with regard to a courtroom presentation using things like Zoom. If you think about it, first of all, most courtrooms throughout the United States, not all, but many are just not equipped in any way whatsoever. Sometimes just to get signal, you know, Wi-Fi in there, sometimes you're like in a vault almost inside that courtroom. Has anybody else experienced that?
Well, I'll tell you, I have two offices, one's in Nashville and one's in DC, and I happened to be in Nashville when everything locked down, and I thought, well, I'll stay here. So the federal court system here, they didn't even have the bandwidth to handle Zoom calls. So they've been scheduling it so there's, you know, one a day kind of deal, but they're currently laying down fiber optic cable to handle this. Now, some of the other courts were better capable. Some of the circuit courts, they had, especially some of the outer boroughs that had just recently built their courtrooms, they actually are ready to go because they laid everything in recently. And so it's more up to date. But when you get into some of the older courthouses, especially the federal court, juvenile here, they haven't been able to do anything. As a matter of fact, they didn't have enough computers to go around for some of these people. So they really had it. And for people like me who it was a very quick switch over. I went from one to another within, you know, an hour. So we were ready to go from the beginning. And it was literally waiting for the rest of the legal industry to kind of catch up with where we've been sitting for years, because we just go from trial to trial to trial and are used to working from everywhere. So the only thing I did different was, as soon as this happened, I made sure that every one of my employees had gigabit speed going to their house so that we could handle Zoom calls. But otherwise, we were ready to go. It's really been waiting for everybody else. And then there's that learning curve for everyone, because not everybody is as technologically savvy as the group here. So we've been doing a lot of CLEs and things like that. People have requested from us so that we can kind of bring them up to speed on how to handle all of this. So that's been my biggest issue, is waiting for everyone else to catch up with people like us.
Has anyone on this group been involved in any organized groups or whatever to kind of reach out to the bar or the courts or anything like that in an organized fashion?
I've just been using my current relationships. I have relationships at various bars that we operate in pretty regularly. And so some of them approached me, and then when they gave me the idea, I thought, hey, that's great. Let's see what other people would be interested in. So I started contacting some of the other bars I've worked with in the past, and everybody's been very, you know, encouraged, and they're all interested. It's just I don't know if there's anybody that's kind of looked at it and said, hey, let's all try and, you know, attack this at once. I haven't seen that.
I can tell you that I've been involved in a couple of different groups. One with some trial tech kind of folks like myself, just kind of looking at all the different technologies and what seems to work and what doesn't. And I've also involved with a group called Online Courtroom Project, and they have a website up already and stuff like that. But that's a group sort of initiated, I think, by some jury consultant types, and then they brought in some techie kind of folks like myself and others, and then also getting on board now some judges and attorneys to try and come up with some standards or best practices, because there is nothing. It's the wild west, you know, as far as what's out there and what the courts are using. I mean, the only thing we know for sure is that there was a survey put out to I think it was either maybe 702 judges, and 48% of them were using Zoom as the platform in their courts, you know, regardless of all the risks and connections to foreign governments and whatever else might be there. That's what they're using, and it was like the quick, easy route. You know, it may change, but that's where they started.
Well, I know the federal courts aren't supposed to be using Zoom. They've not been authorized because of the security compliance issues. So they're using WebEx. And then there's two other platforms. Polycom is another one, and LifeSize is the third that I've heard that they've used. As far as the other ones, Zoom, I know they're not supposed to be using them. Whether they are or not is another issue entirely. I do know that the circuit courts here are using WebEx, Zoom, and GoToMeeting, and it is the Wild West. And that's problematic. I've been encouraging people not to do that, especially because of the nature of what we do. And so, even if you do use a online conferencing, I'm very much pounding this idea of redacting personal information so that, they are getting broadcasted out there in the world. You don't want somebody's social security number out there on their medical document, that's a terrible idea. So there's a lot that needs to be thought about when we're dealing with not only just doing it and how it works, but how do we protect people's information while we're doing this? So.
Yeah, absolutely. Even the Texas, the jury selection that again is on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, it's worth a quick view. You can search along to the hotspots or whatever. But one of the weird parts that really struck me was they had the jurors' faces and names all on there. And it's like, and maybe for that, and maybe they were aware, maybe they weren't aware. Maybe it was just like, oh, maybe we should have thought about that. And it wasn't a major issue, but I mean, can you imagine some criminal cartel case or something? There's my name and my picture on there. Like, no. And then the National Center for State Courts put out a blog on it, and they blurred everything. But it's out there, and so another thing to think about.
I was talking with some colleagues of mine from Latham, and we were discussing what possible configurations in the future could be laid out for jury trials. And one thing that one of the attorneys I was talking to, who had been speaking to a judge, they had this idea, which I think is dumb. Maybe the jurors can just stay at home and they can come in on Zoom to watch the trial and be part of it that way. I see a lot of issues with that. Let's see, barking dogs in the back, or kids needing to be fed, or, oh, I'm just going to get up and go to the bathroom right now, or, oh, I got a text, I got to answer, things like that are going to be too distracting. So I don't see Zoom or this type of platform in the this media we're using here right now really is a really good viable source for trials. What do you all think about that?
Well, you also have the consideration of what device are they using. They may be looking at your smoking gun document on their iPhone, or they may be looking out on a 32-inch monitor. It's going to look different, so that's another consideration. But yeah, I don't know about the jury trial idea, but.
Well, and how do you
valid points? But I think
what about even with witnesses? You can sit there, you can completely coach your witness.
Right.
If you could just have an attorney over on the other side with a big screen behind him, and he's just typing away saying, "This is what you need to say," and the witness looks like he's looking straight ahead and just reading off a teleprompter.
Exactly. Even shoot him a text. Well, if you did it that way.
Too many holes in this. Too many holes for it to be a viable choice for trials, in my opinion.
Yeah,
there are.
Think about it. There are many people, many jurors, not all, of course, but not everybody has a computer. Not everyone is computer savvy.
Well, not everyone has internet either.
That would pose a sort of discrimination of sorts with regard to the jury pool as well, which in my opinion, would not serve the interest really.
Well, and what happens when the internet goes down and somebody's sitting at home and all of a sudden he's not there or she's not there?
Can you guys hear me?
Or they say they're not there and they can't hear anything and they just, kind of check out.
Right.
I think these are all valid.
Put a 30-minute loop of just your video and just let it run over and over again for 6 hours.
I think you're all.
If somebody looks like me and it's not me.
Right. Just have them stare straight ahead. 30 minutes later. All right, done. Let's just loop this, and I'm going to go to the store.
What about someone sitting at the roadside?
Tomorrow's solution, though, under with today's terms. I mean, we have no idea what things are going to look like in the next few years. But I think one thing that this crisis has taught us is that there's a newfound respect for virtual everything, and we're going to find a way. I mean, it's inevitable in my opinion. I think that a lot of the problems that you guys are mentioning are going to have to be overcome, but they're going to be overcome. Somebody's going to figure out how to do it. Things are going to adapt, and we're going to be looking at virtual everything. I'd hate to be in commercial real estate these days after this.
Oh yeah, right.
There are technically viable options out there for a lot of this. I don't think they're economically affordable at this point. Last month, I sent out 3 or 4 proposals. I don't know what happened with the results for remote review of source code. And that calls for equipment to be specially configured with either built-in or separate cameras, built-in privacy screens, software that's monitoring what's happening on the other end. It's all technically feasible, but the cost today is a bit of a challenge.
So I've got a question for George Sosha, Doug Kaminsky, and Dwayne Lights, and then anybody else who wants to enter into this conversation, which is, George, how much of this conversation that we're having right now reminds you of 15 years ago at EDRM, when we would have a conversation about what's possible and what's not possible? I mean, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. This sounds exactly like the conversations that we had 15 years ago about what was possible, what wasn't possible, how is this going to happen? So I'd love to just get your thoughts, Doug's thoughts, Dwayne's thoughts, and then anybody else who wants to opine on that. Like, how familiar is this, or is it
It's like the good old days.
David, as you said, it's rhyming. And I think that once again, we're in a situation where there are all sorts of challenges that we haven't really faced before, with a lack of frameworks for dealing with them, a lack of established tools and processes for how to go about it. So yeah, David, it feels a lot like rhyming right now.
Yeah, definitely. It's I think one of the biggest things we're seeing is we've just received an abrupt catalyst for change. Right. So a lot of firms in particular have been struggling with that push for innovation and hiring CNOs and doing all these things. But now we actually have to do it. And I've often said, never underestimate the power of inertia in law firms. And that has been, I mean, we've been challenging kind of the structure of law firms and delivery of legal services for a number of years now. But I think this actually puts a lot of the day-to-day stuff under a new light. And the whole notion of having to have butts in seats, I think some minds will expand, as well as a newfound appreciation for teachers now that we've had to homeschool kids. So yeah, I think some of these things will be sticky, but the threat here is that watching it all kind of shift back to what's familiar and comfortable, particularly for law firms.
Yeah, I think we spent the last 5 years trying to open up the office, and now you can look, and now we're actually going to have to start putting walls back up again. And I think before firms or any corporations start investing too much in that, they're going to start looking at, okay, well, how can we be virtual? We've shown that we can do that, but the workplace is going to be different now. I think we can all, as well as, for those that probably want to work remotely, now they have the chance because they've had to the last 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, I think what else is interesting, a real quick add to that is I just saw the results of the AmLaw surveys, and they showed for the first time in a long time the second tranche, so 101 to 200 has outstripped the first 100. And some of that I think is going to be seen even more in the future. It's those firms that adapted and adopted quickly to this change and have realized, okay, here's our chance to be able to integrate some of these things that create efficiencies for us. But we haven't been able to because it's just been kind of the status quo. So anytime you take a traditional industry and there's a catalyzing event that forces you to challenge the status quo, there's opportunities, and those that seize the opportunities are going to rise.
You imagine a day where in trials, you've got the judge up there with a mask on, you've got the clerks, you've got just one trial tech at counsel's table, and the jury's behind them in the gallery, and everything else is brought in by monitors and with the trial tech there, pulling up documents, of course, and also doing video conferencing that way. What do you? It's an idea we were kicking around the other day.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, I know that in the Los Angeles courts, you know, one of the ideas or discussion topics anyway has been that they're going to reconfigure the courtrooms, and, you know, with the idea being that they're going to have space so they can have separation between jurors and whatever. And, you know, I mean, while I think that certainly the bench trial is not really that hard to do, you know, for any of us right now, you know, that are doing the trial piece of it. I think the jury trial is going to would be a difficult mess to try and do virtually, completely remotely, and I suspect that you know, that everybody's going to want to get back into the courtroom and before the jury trials really completely get rolling again, which, I mean, that seems to hopefully be right around the corner.
Well,
Something we had
a lot of the lawyers that I've been working with, they want to be in the courtroom. They don't like arguing in this fashion. They feel like it's not necessarily, it doesn't come across the same way. Yes. And the same thing with witnesses as well. It's harder to judge a person via a screen that they're talking, or, you know, sitting out there in person where you're looking at them. So I think that there's a lot of hesitancy in moving the jury trials into a full virtual. But I think eventually necessity is the mother of invention. And I think when this whole thing started, they were like, oh, we'll wait a week or two. It'll be fine. We'll get back to normal business. Here it is 2 months later. They're like, well, maybe we should be doing more online. So you are starting to see a lot more arbitrations and bench hearings, you know, that are actually taking place. It's just, you know, how much longer will it take them before they give in? That's the question.
We've actually been having some recent discussions with courts up north of Philadelphia, and it's something where the judges were being proactive in trying to find creative solutions, and they were just wondering what it would be ballpark to do a setup in a courtroom where you have 4 different monitors with a camera and a tripod in front of the witness, so that you're able to spread the jury out, you know, maybe 4 in the box and then the rest spread out through the remaining part of the rows and rows in the gallery. So, you know, 2 months in, they're starting to see a little bit of the pressure, feel the pressure, and seeing what they can do to try to accommodate in-person jury trials, but just spreading them out, but making sure everybody has a good view of the witness, which would be, you know, we had 2 or 4 55-inch LCD monitors spread out through the courtroom, so they have that in-person ability to see, but being able to have the big monitors for them to see just kind of the details and everything else. Early stages, but great to see the bench trying to get innovative and see what options are available.
What about the idea of some game technology? You know, the way folks play video games today is all virtual, and I think it hasn't really gotten beyond the avatar yet, but if there was a way, if ever there was a resource, I've been in some of these software, and people can gather, people can talk, and share resources. I'm wondering if there's something there.
I don't know if any of you are familiar with Discord, but that's one of those platforms that a lot of the gamers use, and it's my only concern is, like with everything else, is the security portion of anything we use. So, but yeah, there's definitely software and platforms that will work for this. It's just a matter of making sure the security's there, but also making sure that you don't have jurors doing things they're not supposed to.
It's hard enough to keep them awake when they're sitting in the box in front of the judge, let alone behind a webcam.
True.
Obviously, Zoom security has been quite the buzz the last couple weeks. Has anybody dug into the healthcare HIPAA compliant version of Zoom and see how that measures up?
I actually had a doctor call in that way, and I didn't see any problem with it. It was definitely a secured connection, and the doctor's assistant was freaking out about the whole thing because it was the first time they were using it. But I didn't perceive anything as a patient. Just having a telemedicine call with the doctor was no big deal.
It was interesting. I really enjoyed it on YouTube too. Just kidding, just kidding.
I know there are a lot of the hospitals as well as the Met Police out in London. They're using Microsoft's Teams platform. Apparently that's pretty darn secure. And you know, with Microsoft backing it, they have plenty of money to throw at security. But I've heard good things about that. That's primarily in the medical side of things. I don't know. I haven't really played with Zoom to the point where I'm digging into compliance. My security guys are telling me, at least for now, I wouldn't trust Zoom to be necessarily completely secure and compliant. That's what I'm being told.
Yeah, from most of our perspectives.
We got Rocky on the call. Let's check in with Rocky. Sorry to put you on the spot, buddy, but what's happening on Teams?
Yeah, Teams is pretty damn secure. But I think it'll be interesting to see in not just our profession, but in lots of different professions, how I think everyone's going through the same type of questioning, you know, looking at, okay, people are doing things remotely and they're inching their way in, and, you know, some of them more reluctant than others. But there's a lot of room for the technology to grow, and there's a lot of room for people to look at how we're going to adapt and not just adopt, but adapt these technologies to specific industries in order to make it work. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes up.
Rocky, Julia sent out a note to us last week and said that our company had spent 3,000 hours in Teams meetings last month, just in the preceding 4 weeks. So please pass along the thanks to to the group. So
yeah, it's amazing the amount of growth, which of course also introduces for us, for a lot of the people on this call, the questions around, okay, so now how do we actually discover that data, and what do we do with it? You know, how do we both preserve it? How do we keep it together? And I think that's one of the areas where, luckily for me, you know, I have to deal with it on Teams, but how do you preserve Zoom calls and the chats that come with the calls, and, you know, all of these different platforms? It introduces a lot of interesting compliance questions.
we also have one or two people who are hearing impaired, and it was interesting to, you know, post, you know, right with the pandemic transition, to be able to, you know, click the live captions buttons in Teams, for example, and you know, have immediate access, you know, and accessibility for everybody. And I have seen the commercials too, the live translates coming soon to Teams. But you're right, from a discovery perspective, I have no idea. Are those cached? You know, are those transcripts, you know, locally stored? Are they, you know, what happens if someone is screen recording the video, you know, on the local laptop? How does that? Anyway, a lot of discovery questions, obviously. But from a deployment and ease of access, it's been great.
I can, I'll mention too, a couple other that are out there. Video technologies going right now are Blue Jeans is one. I think the appellate courts are kind of pushing that. Some of the federal courts as well, other federal, which has just been acquired by Verizon. So I expect that we'll probably be dumping a bunch of money in that as well. And then of course, Google Meet, or whatever they're calling that now, you know, they have couple of dollars in their wallet to throw into it as well. So I imagine, I mean, I don't know if we're going to ever see a real standard or whatever we're going to have, whether we're going to have several. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's not that difficult to operate, fortunately, but just not secure. A lot of it's not all that secure yet.
I got an interesting
think
question. I'm wondering if they could introduce some form of security level through a blockchain.
It's been discussed. I know it's certainly something that's out there. That's not something that your average person on the street has any understanding of, and likely has a great deal of fear of, especially because of the financial news that's come out on a lot of that. But it's certainly another way to break the active link in there. I mean, I know from my personal perspective, I'll use whatever they tell me to use when I go into that courtroom, because that's what they have, and that's what we have to we have to work with.
I think there's the question of identity for one thing, right? Because blockchain can help on a transactional basis and assure that all the players that are on are the ones who are supposed to be there for that particular event. But how do you assure the identity of the people that are joining, right? And then permissioning based on that. I actually dealt with this like 12 years ago. I was working with the government of Alberta, and they wanted to use Link, you know, the forerunner of Skype. So Rocky will understand that. Those of us that haven't already been at, and their worry was this: they were looking at telehealth, so beyond our little world, and the ability to remote into, say, a surgical operating theater. The problem is that the permissions weren't granular enough to keep a janitor from logging into an operating theater. So HIPAA was a huge issue, right? The privacy issues related to that. So that's kind of that whole big question. None of these platforms were built for validation of identity or for privacy.
I don't think that's going to be necessarily the blockchain that solves that. There's a lot of authenticator apps. And if you look at the medical world and doctors and clinics, that's what they're using right now. And those apps exist versus SMS codes for, you know, 2-level or multi-level authentication. So you have to, blockchain's just kind of plumbing in.
So I said, blockchain is great for event or transactional based things, but not identity based things as much, unless now there's some standard, maybe it forces some standard, but I don't think this will be the thing that forces the standard.
See if you
the
combine
bigger
something
issue.
like facial recognition or some other type of biometric into the software. So I don't remember who, I think David, you had, or Ted, you had raised the issue of how do you know that the juror that the juror who's supposed to be listening to the trial is sitting there actually listening after login. But you know, imagine the camera that we're using right now. The cameras are able to do some kind of biometric scanning on a periodic basis, you know, as a means of guaranteeing that the person who's supposed to be talking and listening is actually the person in front of the camera. You know, I just don't think that we can envision yet what solutions may arise for some of these problems.
Scott, that by the way, Scott, that technology is there now for the biometric facial scanning. It's not inexpensive, and who knows how reliable it is. It also has a challenge. If you move your head too far away, you need to keep your head in a certain place within the screen. And just imagine telling jurors they can't move their head throughout the duration of the trial.
No, George, I mean, I see that. I see those as problems now, but like I said,
I agree.
That's the verge, right? We're on the verge of somebody making a breakthrough in areas like that, and in areas that we probably can't even predict. But they're going to be solutions to the challenges because, you know, I said earlier, the precedent, if you will, has been set. People are becoming addicted to virtual everything, and they're going to find a way.
A lot of us
so here's a
already
different
have.
approach. Here's a different approach. I had a client, a small manufacturing company. They made national, if not international news, because they offered to all of their employees a choice of either a ring, a silicone ring they could wear with a chip in it so that they could get into the building, use the vending machines and the like, or a chip implanted right here.
It's the
And
mark of the beast.
almost to a person, the employees voluntarily, without any pressure, chose the chip.
No
I
way.
met with, I think he came and went quickly, but I think he was the CIO, I forget now. And when he joined, his initial reaction was, no way, not me, not in this lifetime or in the next. He held out for about a week. And that's, you know what? It's so much easier. I don't have to worry about a card or an extra ring or anything like that. It's just right here. Besides, it's a lot easier to get that can of soda from the vending machine that way. So he went ahead and had
Until
that
there's a
chip
termination.
implanted.
Yeah, until there's a termination, and that's a hell of a termination to have to remove that chip.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
you just wipe out the.
Or, you know,
just
if there's
wipe
a,
out the
if
entry
there's
in
a,
the
if
database.
it's, you know, put along this vein here
On
and
the
a
checklist.
small explosive charge, it gives a whole new meaning determination.
If
You can
your
go
boss
see your
tells you
local
you're
vet.
scheduled for surgery, you know something's up.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to mention, I think, Joe, I think you're muted if you're saying something. I was just going to mention, a lot of us already have this, some sort of pretty capable scanning device, right?
It's true.
You were saying something, Joe. You were muted though.
Yeah, I was saying it sounds like a bad sci-fi movie plot. They'll activate all those people that have the chips and they'll have them commit some nefarious activity.
So, as a practical matter, they are actually RFID chips, so they only work within a fairly short distance. At the time, I think you had to be 6 inches from the reader or something like that. And to disable them from working meant deleting one entry in a database, one encrypted entry in a database. Even so, I wasn't stepping up as a visitor to say, I'll take a chip as well.
I'll try.
Remember the ads in Minority Report? They use some kind of facial recognition. That, you know, I know that it's nowhere close to being as good as it was in that movie, but things get better.
Yeah.
Never know.
This guy's going to commit a crime. Watch him.
I have a question for the group. What are you thinking about conferences this year? Is anybody traveling to, does anyone see themselves traveling to a conference in September, October, you know, sitting down in a room with 100 people? I see a lot of heads shaking no.
Is ILTA still happening in August? Because I know that's still on the.
I don't know about ILTA. I heard that Georgetown already moved the November event to virtual. That's hearsay. I don't know, but you know, I was texting a little bit with David Cowan there. He's planning on holding events in New York and Chicago in October and November. I haven't heard from EDI. I'm not sure what they're planning in October.
I think it just comes down to comfort, right? Everybody's got to be comfortable and safe. And I have not heard anything official, but unofficially, I've heard more than once that you could forget about conferences for 2020.
That's been my thought, but then I sort of fast forward to legal tech, and I think, all right, man, New York in January, is that you know, 8,000
might be the end of legal tech.
8,000 people flying, not flying.
What could possibly go wrong?
There's some mitigating factors here too. For ILTA, they need to have a profitable conference, whether it's virtual or otherwise, to continue to exist.
Yeah.
And this was EDI's anniversary. So there's a whole bunch of money and other things sunk into the whole conference. In other words, all the setup for it. So
sure,
you know, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, how do they shift and adapt, or do they feel like they have to do the conference just to make it all work?
I think the biggest thing, one of the biggest, hardest things is going to be getting people on airplanes. I mean, if a conference is somewhere within driving distance and you can drive in your own personal car and be assured at the other end that you're going to have social distance from everybody, maybe, but I know personally, I'm not getting on an airplane anytime soon. They were bad enough before all of this happened. And it seems like they're even worse now.
I know many
I'm
of us
less
on
concerned
many of
about
us on this call did the Merck conference, and it was done virtually a couple weeks ago. Originally, that was supposed to be in Chicago, and obviously, I was looking forward to the trip to Chicago. And but at least the conference went forward in terms of the education content that was shared and everything like that, and everyone was able to interact virtually. Certainly, there's a lot that's lost there in terms of networking opportunities and face-to-face time that you get to spend with colleagues. But it certainly was better than nothing.
So I think for conferences, actually getting on the airplane is probably the least of it. It's getting to the airport, going around in the airport, getting back. What do you do when you get to the conference venue? Who's going to want to get into an elevator with a bunch of other people? What do you do about walking down hallways that aren't wide enough? Who sits in a room and how many? I think there are a lot of challenges that we haven't figured out the answers to yet. So for me, I'm not excited about getting on an airplane, but I'm even more concerned about everything on either side of the airplane.
Sure.
Good point. I heard a San Diego judge, they were talking about, they've got the brand new courtroom there, and like 25 floors or something like that, and said, well, we have, the rooms are large enough, but they have set a 2-person per elevator limit. And so 25 floors, I mean, where are they going? She said it could take you a half an hour at least to get, a jury from the bottom to the top. They have several elevators, but that's not probably the only one trial going on in that entire 25 floor courthouse.
I'd love to see them try that at the New York Hilton.
There are 3 elevators, right?
I mean, we're week 12 right now in the Silicon Valley at shelter in place, and people are getting pretty frustrated, and there's lawsuits that are just around that. I don't know that those are going to involve e-discovery, but with Elon Musk suing, having his plant reopened, and so forth, there's starting to be a lot of frustration. 3 months at home is a long time. And so you're going to start seeing a lot more pressure to reopen. The stats are down though. I mean, we've for 5 days haven't had any deaths in Santa Clara County. We were hit pretty hard early on.
I get the safety components and the metrics, that the virus, the transmission and the rates, are all sort of, fast forward, to October, it could be really optimistic, but and companies obviously need to open in whatever degree they can. But to Doug's point, as a conference organizer, the financial decisions that need to go into place to bet whether people will pay to attend the conference becomes a very individualistic decision. Does Caroline decide that she wants to get on a plane and travel to the conference? Does Julie decide that she wants to put investment dollars sponsoring a conference that people may or may not arrive at? There's a lot of individualistic decisions that come up at that point that my crystal ball, I can't see that far out, but I also don't know that I see too many people volunteering to get on a plane and go to the conferences yet, at least, until there's wide vaccine availability. But I'm wildly curious to see sort of how that plays out as we fast forward 3-4 months ahead. Because I spend a lot of time at conferences, as I'm sure you all do too.
Yeah, I mean, I
That's
think
you, Dan. It's conferences that a lot of us see each other, other than the newly updated listserv. It's conferences. ACC did a survey. I thought that was interesting. So that whole legal ops orientation, and I believe, if I remember the results, it was close to 50% of people said that they would go to conferences, face-to-face, non-virtual conferences, if there was safeguards in place. If, even they said, here's our health policy, here are all the steps that we took, and people looking and go, yeah, that seems cool. 50% said they would attend this year.
Well, that's great, because I still have a lot of June and July conferences that are on the calendar that haven't been canceled. So I'm curious to see sort of how that even plays out.
Yeah, I have a June wedding that was canceled. So, for the same reason. So I think we'll see people moving back into it, but I think they're open-minded if it looks like there's enough precautions, but that's really the question. None of us are medical professionals, or some of you might be, but arbiters of what's good enough. I think it's just, we look at it and it seems plausible, just, you know, for the same reasons we do other things. You know, we'll give away our privacy for cool apps. You know, we might just say, this seems right. We're not having to check for vaccine or anything else, but yeah, they're cleaning stuff. That's cool.
Yeah, I think obviously every day we all take risks. We get in a car, we get on an airplane, we get on a train, whatever, we walk and talk to our neighbor. But we all kind of know what the potential outcomes are, and we can easily assess, at this point, we can assess them. I think with this whole COVID-19 stuff, we just still don't have enough information, because it still feels like every single day, the medical people are coming out with something new or something different or some new symptom, or there's, you know, and it's like, you just don't, not that we're ever going to get a 100% answer one way or another. I think we have maybe too much information. So it's really hard to assess what your acceptable risks are. And, you know, if somebody else's risk assessment is going to be very different than my personal risk assessment might be, based on the information I have, or the people I'm living with, or commuting, you know, talking with, or neighbors with, or anything, or where I live, where I'm trying to get to. I think there's just so much information bombarding us, but also not enough information, or not enough of the right information yet to help us make good decisions, or make decisions personally. Let's forget about good decisions or bad decisions. Just make a decision about something.
Yeah, I heard somewhere that
Hopefully the summer heat will kill it, a lot of it. So but hope isn't a plan, but you know, see rates go down.
Right. I heard someone say for the in the courts anyway, that it's not going to ever be back to normal unless there's a vaccine. You know, if there's a vaccine and we can be assured and guaranteed that, you know, the person we're sitting next to, they're okay. And if they're not, if we get it, it's not going to be anything more than, I don't know, a cold or whatever the vaccine would do. But, you know, before that time, you know, with the unknowns that are out there, it's like, we're all going to be nervous. You know, I don't want to be face to face with a bunch of other people. You know, they might be carriers. We've got well, we're just about there, I guess, time wise. But I mean, if anyone, or I could say everyone, if you want, maybe take 30 seconds and say who you are, or what you're doing, what your business is, or something. Welcome to do that. I think most of us know each other on this group, or know who each other are at least. But feel free to go ahead and you know, I don't know how to. I'm not going to assign or point fingers or anything like that, or I can't say you over here. But yeah, no. I mean, if everybody wants to take a quick 30 seconds and say whatever you want to say, and what you're doing, and plug your business or whatever you want to do.
All right, I'll jump in. I'm Raul Estravit, Encore Litigation Services. Been in business for about 8 years now. Former paralegal from Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher. Worked at several other law firms. Also worked with Ken Katarski for a while, and Charles Duncan. Nice group out there at On the Record. Nice people there. And no, I do trial technology, e-discovery, run trials. I've done 2 international arbitrations, which has been fun. Going to different countries, that's been fun. And trials all over the United States. I got complete setup for trial kits, or what do you want to call it? Also work well with databases and things like that. I know concordance, what I remember of it anyway, because it's been a long time. But Relativity and iConnect and all the other stuff, a lot of other platforms I work with also. And I love what I do. If I could do it for free, I would do it for free. That's how much I like what I'm doing.
You can work for me then.
I'm Kristen Thomas. I own KT Trial Consulting. We, as the name says, do primarily trial consulting, you know, jury consulting, graphics, that kind of stuff. When I joined this group, I was working in-house at Skadden Arps, and when trial and technology was more like acetate slides and So, and the Elmo. So I kind of grew up in the concordance, sanction, summation, that whole world, and things have really changed since then. So, but I hope everybody's staying safe, and I really look forward to seeing everybody out there in the world once we are able to. So.
I'm Nikolai Poznikov. I work for V-Discovery vendor Midtown Manhattan. Been doing LitSupport for a while, but unfortunately I learned too late about this group because when I started working, we were all on dial-up, and access to dial-up was kind of limited in the place where I worked. So I had to do it the hard way and figure it out on my own. So it's good seeing everyone. Now I know some of the faces behind this group.
Well, Michael Roden here. I
My name.
started in LitSupport at Brobeck, went on to eDiscovery at FIOS. Yeah, I got a thumbs up for the Brobeck folks there. Currently, I've transitioned to working in open source software compliance, so I'm working for Qualcomm. And it's surprising how the skill sets have transferred from eDiscovery to software compliance, although thankfully the time pressure of trials is not there.
So my name is Richard Ito. I work at the Attorney General's office here in California. So I know we work with On the Record a lot, and also Ted Brooks had a large trial completed successfully last year. But I think when I was on the Yahoo LitServ, I was probably working at a boutique firm in Century City called Gibbs Giddin, or at my early stage at Morrison Forster. But it's great to see familiar faces. I haven't been on the Yahoo LitServ for a while, but that was a platform for me to learn and develop. And so I'm very grateful for the opportunity to learn and also to contribute to a LitServ.
Hey, I have Joe Bartolo here from New York office for Novus, formerly Capital Novus. We have proprietary solutions that are aimed at managing information from the far left end of the EDRM scheme through the discovery production phase. Certainly feel free to check out our website. I've been doing this far too long. Since 2005, I've been on the LitSupport side of the fence. Prior to that, I actually practiced law for several years in New York.
Hi, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Julie Lewis with Digital Mountain. I started the company in 2003. We do e-discovery, computer and cybersecurity services. Work with about 70 of the AmLaw 200 to date, and I'm missing seeing everybody. And I see many familiar faces, you know, that I've known for. We just had our 17th year anniversary this year, actually this month.
Congrats.
Thank you.
I'll introduce myself. I'm Megan Miller. I think I've probably worked with 5 or 6 of you. In the recent 5 or 6 years, I've been with Edge Legal Marketing, helping a lot of e-discovery and other legal technology providers to better know the market, get their name out there. We do full service marketing. I got into e-discovery back around 2006 or 7, I think. It's been a long time. And launching the Digital War Room desktop e-discovery software. You may have heard of it, I hope. And we at the time saw ourselves as the next replacement or an improved e-discovery platform, with our competitors being summation and concordance. So that's when I got into the LitSupport group, was to, you know, sort of pick people's brains and hear what people were saying about what they liked and didn't like about concordance or summation. And it helped me kind of put together competitive analysis and that kind of thing. So it's been a lot of fun watching how products and technologies have evolved in this industry. And it's been really fun for me listening to everyone today, because the screen full of faces, it's like you're the brain trust of the e-discovery industry, really, in a lot of ways. So thank you for letting me join in, Ted.
I'm Dan Kinney. I work at ProSearch Strategies today and have for the last 10 years. I was a client actually of ProSearch's for 3 years before that, and I think my legal technology experience dates back to 2003 in San Diego. But a great journey, and I think my first eDiscovery conference and panel might have been with Dwayne at one of George and Browning's EDRR events. Anyway, great crew, great industry, and I've enjoyed the ride all the way since. So anyway, thanks Ted for getting us together today, and you know, not sure if we can look forward to this format again, but it was great to see the group revive and see a lot of familiar faces in the crowd today. So hope everybody stays safe and hope to connect again soon.
I'll jump in if you guys don't mind. I want to thank Ted again for hosting this almost webinar almost. Very nice. Thanks again, Ted. I'm one of the few people that have been around probably as long as you, if not longer, since 1991 doing electronic presentation in the courtroom and graphics and the like. So thanks for the shout out to, thanks for the shout out from Raul and also from Richard. And good luck to everyone in the future with all this. Let's hope it kind of gets back to a little more normal, but if it doesn't, then we will all adapt like we always do. So thanks again, everyone, and stay safe.
Hi, I'll chime in. I'm Charles Duncan. Hi, Raul. Hi, Richard. Nice to be on this and seeing other faces that are out there. And just when are we going to get back? I am so tired of doing this. I just want to get back in the courtroom and start. Ken and I started this back in '96. We both worked at LSI before that. And I'm just tired of being here at home. I want to get out there. So, hi, everyone.
Good seeing you guys.
Anyone else?
Hey, I have a last question for Ted, or maybe for the whole group, but does anybody have any objections? I took a lot of notes during the call. I'd love to do like a social post, or I took a screenshot. Would you mind my sharing any of this information? I may even pull it together into a short article and offer it up to LTN or someone.
Yeah, no, please do. Feel free to reach out to me by email if you'd like to. And I've gotten a few shots myself, and I also have the YouTube live stream, which is going to include the whole thing, and I'll just leave it up there for a while, possibly, maybe indefinitely. I mean, I know there were several people watching on the YouTube stream as well.
Yeah, and we could share that around in the other places too. Great.
All right.
We should do this at least, what, maybe 2 times a year, maybe 3, just for fun, or no?
Not once a week.
We're all doing too much Zoom.
I'm available any day.
Yeah, true. Yeah, good point. Yeah, let me check my trial calendar.
Yeah,
Oh wait,
right?
no, I don't have a trial calendar.
Yeah, I'll get right back to you on that.
Yeah.
No, I think it'd be a good idea if we just met at least once or twice a year. I think. I don't know.
It'd be fun.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
Little inside scoop. We apparently the Yahoo group does still work. I mean, I wouldn't encourage everybody to start bombing it, but if we really want to make something happen, we can do that.
It was nice to see that email. For me, when I got the emails, I started reading what was going on. I was like, oh my God. The old days, back in the good times, right? It was a great time.
Yeah, I think most of us were pretty shocked to see that it woke up over the weekend. But I do appreciate Ted to coordinate this Zoom call today. I mean, it was neat to, to get everybody on, as many people, and to see faces. So I do. We'll definitely do it again, and I appreciate Ted's effort in coordinating, because I'm sure it wasn't easy to do, but glad you did it.
Yeah, no worries, my pleasure. All right, everyone, we'll kill it here. Thanks for joining in, and nice to see you all, and best wishes to everybody, and stay safe.
You too.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Take care,
Thanks,
everybody.
Ted. Take care, everybody.
Bye.